Hello, I'm Jennifer, and welcome to the Krewe of Japan Podcast, a weekly podcast where we take you on audio journeys through Japanese culture.
This time on Krewe of Japan Podcast.
Welcome back to our podcast, or if you're just joining the crew for the first time on this Season 6 premiere episode, yokoso! Welcome to the podcast. As we try to do every season, we wanted to start the season off with a splash. So we dove right in with a season opener that'll have you laughing, learning, and leaning into the unique world of traditional Japanese entertainment. We're talking about rakugo, Japan's centuries-old comedic storytelling art form that packs punchlines, puns, and profound observations, all delivered by a lone performer with nothing but a fan, a hand towel, and a whole lot of character voices. Speaking of performers, today's episode features none other than Katsura Sunshine, a Canadian-born rakugo storyteller who has taken Japan and the international stage by storm. You heard that right. A foreign rakugo-ka who trained in Japan, was officially apprenticed, and is now sharing his time-honored art with the world. During our hilarious but insightful chat with Sunshine, we cover a wide spectrum of rakugo-related topics, like what makes rakugo so unique and how it differs from other forms of comedy.
But basically we are told, and this is where it kind of differs from stand-up comedy, depending on the comedian's style, but for the most part, you don't want to divide your audience. The whole point of your introduction is to bring the audience together, to make the audience like you and want to hear your story. And I think that's a bit different. When stand-up comedy philosophy is like, oh, if I'm pissing off 10% of the audience, just perfect, right? That's exactly the line I want to be walking, is what a lot of comedians do, which I love. I love stand-up comedy, but it's different in that ways.
How a guy from Toronto ends up in a kimono on stage performing a 400-year-old Japanese comedy.
I used to go every day to this yakitori shop near my place in Yokohama, and the owner was a rakugo fanatic. And he used to put on little shows in his yakitori restaurant like once a month on a Sunday when the restaurant's not open. He'd turn one of the rooms of his restaurant into a little theater and invite two storytellers to do 2 stories each. So you get 4 stories over 2 hours. And he just asked me, he said, look, if you're so interested in Japanese culture, maybe you should come and see rakugo. I said, oh, rakugo, that sounds good.
How this traditional art form is evolving and expanding outside of Japan.
One of my aims this year is to do what's called o-neta, which are the big, very, very involved stories that people do only when they're well into their careers. And these kinds of stories have never, to my knowledge, been translated in English and attempted to be performed abroad.
And so much more. Whether you're just a general lover of Japanese culture, a seasoned comedy nerd, or someone curious about how comedic stories can transcend cultures, this episode is going to have you laughing out loud. What better way is there to kick off our brand new season? So grab your fan and settle in as we open the curtain on Season 6 and the art of rakugo with the one and only Katsura Sunshine.
Hey, are you new to the crew? Yokoso! We hope you enjoy this episode. If you like what you hear today, then you'll really love our back catalog of episodes from earlier this season and previous seasons. We've had some incredible guests, like actor Sotaro Yasuda discussing his role in Super Sentai and Kamen Rider, former City Pop idol Yu Hayami talking with us about City Pop, 3-time sumo grand champion Konishiki Yasukichi talking with us about sumo, and so much more. After you finish up this episode, hit that subscribe button or follow or whatever it is, and get notified when new episodes come out. Then while you wait for the new episode to drop, play catch up with the crew. But before you do any of that, let's dive into today's episode.
Hello, listeners. Welcome back. I am super excited for this episode. I have always been a proud enthusiast of, traditional Japanese arts. We've done a few over the years on our podcast, and I'm finally happy to say that we're doing something more theater-based, and I really am excited about talking about rakugo. I'm here with Doug. Hey, Doug, you can make this one. Nice to see you.
Hello.
And of course, we couldn't do this alone, Doug and I, so we have our special guest today, Katsura Sunshine.
Good morning. I don't know
Good
if it's
morning.
airing in the morning, but Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Sunshine here from Tokyo.
Yes, we're so happy to have you and for you to discuss your experience with rakugo. And I'm super ecstatic. I've been waiting for this for quite a while. I've been waiting for the courage to even ask you to come on. It's
I
more
had
of
to
the
prod
issue.
her multiple times.
Really?
Just email him. Just
Yeah.
send an email.
Yeah.
I never
I'm-
thought of myself as intimidating. That's pretty
It's
funny.
me. It's more me.
No, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Yes, for those listeners that don't really know you, can you just do like a brief introduction of who you are?
Sure. 2 seconds. I have a phone call coming in. I don't know if this is going to be recorded, so I should let this pass.
You're good.
Sorry, it was my birthday day for yesterday, so my dad's trying to call me.
Okay.
I feel bad. I'll call back
happy
after.
birthday.
Thank you. 55 for crying out loud. Yeah. Rakugo is a 400-year tradition of storytelling in Japan. And the stories have been passed down from master to apprentice through the ages up until the present day. And right now, there are about 1,000 some professional rakugo storytellers in Japan. So in terms of the number of storytellers, it's the most in history. And to give people a visual, it's a lone storyteller in a kimono kneeling on a cushion and using very basic props like a hand towel and fan to sometimes represent different objects. And basically tell stories. And the stories are told not through narration as much as through conversations between characters. So there's not much once upon a time there lived a something, something, something as much as, hello, Kiroku, are you there? Oh, I was wondering who it was. It's you, Jinbei-san. Come on in. I was talking to your mother and she is very upset. What? Why is she angry? That kind of thing.
Okay. I don't think a lot of foreigners even know about rakugo. I'm just a nerd and I do know about it, but definitely a different style than what a lot of people are used to when it comes to like comedy and stuff.
Yeah, it's very much its own specific style. The first part of a rakugo set is called the makura, or the pillow. And that is actually a lot like stand-up comedy because it's just a storyteller's own material, like a little bit of observational humor, like self-introduction and self-deprecating humor. And then there's also like a little bit of cultural background that kind of informs the story that the storyteller is going to tell. And then often during this part, the storyteller will try to figure out what kind of audience they have and is often choosing which story to go into once they're on stage already. And then the second part is this story that's been passed down and that was taught by their master and involves the conversation. Every story ends in a punchline, like it was a long, elaborate joke.
Okay.
Well, there you go, listeners. Rakugo 101.
There's, you got it.
Before we go even further into rakugo, I want to just take one step back and ask you a question about not necessarily Japan, not necessarily rakugo, but New Orleans. Since we're a New Orleans podcast, we usually have a question about this to just see what our guests' experiences are with the city or the culture or whatever it may be.
Sure.
Have you ever been before? Or if you haven't, what is the first thing that comes to mind when you hear New Orleans?
First thing that comes to mind is music.
Music. Nice.
And food. The two most important things in my life. Yeah.
You can't see my belly right now, but yeah, food.
I have been.
Oh.
And it's beautiful. I loved it when I was there and saw a lot of jazz concerts and blues and ate a lot of food.
What was your favorite meal? Do you remember?
You know what? I don't even remember. It was a gumbo of some kind.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, gumbo.
But,
it can't go wrong. Well, I guess you could go.
No,
I've
you
seen
could
some.
totally go wrong.
I've seen some like Instagram things where it's like, oh, look at this gumbo, and then I look at it, I'm like, that is not gumbo.
Not gumbo.
And do you do like blackened fish, blackened chicken, those kind of things in New Orleans?
yeah.
Or is that
Yeah, blackened catfish and just
different
different
catfish?
Yeah,
Love it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I want to go. I think the one thing New Orleans lacks right now is a good rakugo performance every once in a while.
I was thinking about the same answer. I was like, you know what? We could really use. I don't know, sometime maybe in September. I don't know.
That's what New
that'd be
Orleans needs.
Yeah.
It sure does.
I mean, our sports teams are a joke already, but I mean, we need a different form of comedy in this city.
Well, to get us back on our rakugo journey, I do want to start us off with your personal journey. How did you initially get interested in Japan, in rakugo of all things, and then what inevitably brought you to Japan?
Yeah, so originally I've always been in show business.
Oh.
I was producing and writing musicals at first. And these were based on ancient Greek comedies. I don't know if our listeners have heard of Aristophanes. So that was my focus. And I had one show that was a hit in Toronto when I was about 23, 24 years old, called Aristophanes' Clouds, which I translated from Greek and made into a musical using the music of opera.
Nice.
And it ran for about 15 months in a small theater in Toronto. And that's basically the peak of my life. It's been all downhill from there. I turned 55 yesterday. But while researching Greek theater, I read an article by a scholar, just a scholarly article that said, Dan, this is, 2,500-year-old theater, right? It's 5th century BC. But there happen to be all these similarities between ancient Greek comedy and tragedy and Japanese no and kabuki. And no and kabuki the roots go about just maybe 400 or 500 years back.
Mm-hmm.
So they're 2 centuries apart and an ocean apart, and yet there's all the I can't remember specifically, but there's use of masks and some of the kind of tones of presentation and the instruments they use as the music and that kind of thing. And so at the time, I thought, wow, I'd love to see kabuki. I'd love to see no. And I don't know if you guys remember 25 years ago, but there was no Google, there was no YouTube. You couldn't just click it onto your screen. You had to, if you want to see kabuki, you got to go to Japan. So I just thought, all right, I got a bit of time. Let's go to Japan. And I thought I'd come here to Japan, see kabuki and no a little bit, maybe stay for a couple months and go back to Toronto and just keep minding my own business. But basically the third day in Japan, I thought, no, this place is way too interesting. I'm never going home to Canada. That's it. And now it's 25 years later.
Nice.
It happens, right? Sometimes you land somewhere and you're like, oh, wait, wow, that time really flew by. Oh, it's 25 years. Wow.
Yeah, 25 years.
So then where did rakugo come from all of this? Because you just said you went for the kabuki and the no. So now I'm very curious.
Yeah, so about my 5th year here, I don't know. Do you guys know yakitori? Have you ever heard of that Japanese food? It's like chicken skewers, barbecue chicken skewers kind of thing. I used to go every day to this yakitori shop near my place in Yokohama. And the owner was a rakugo fanatic. And he used to put on little shows in his yakitori restaurant like once a month on a Sunday when the restaurant's not open. He'd turn one of the rooms of his restaurant into a little theater and invite 2 storytellers to do 2 stories each. So you get 4 stories over 2 hours. And he just asked me, he said, look, if you're so interested in Japanese culture, maybe you should come and see rakugo. I was like, oh, rakugo, that sounds good. And by then, this is key. Kabuki, you can appreciate even if you don't speak the language because very visual. The costumes, the makeup is stunning.
It is.
The movement is beautiful. And with Kabuki, they have entirely dance sections in that respect. There's so much to appreciate. With rakugo, you got like an old guy like me kneeling on a cushion, turning his head left and right, playing characters. Like, it's nothing to see if you don't understand the language. But luckily, I had enough Japanese at that point that I could understand the storytellers. And after 4 stories, I said, oh, then you introduce, and then the theme of this little comic talk goes into the theme of the story. Then he does the story, and then it's a punchline. It's like, oh, this is incredible. Again, it was love at first sight. I said, I got it. This is what I was born to do. So all of my life is thanks to yakitori.
That's great.
I have barbecue chicken skewers to thank.
You know what? I like that for you. Yes.
Yeah.
Man, I wish I could thank yakitori or yakiniku or some kind of dish for my life, but usually I end up thanking them for the indigestion. I usually get in the morning to eat too much.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It's so good.
Yeah,
that is so funny.
So I said, I want to do this. And the owner of the restaurant, Ken-san, said, well, in order to become a proper storyteller, you have to apprentice to a master, and it's 3 to 4 years of basically indentured servitude. And there's no foreigners at the time. There was no foreigner, no non-Japanese storytellers, barely any women, for crying out loud. And that's changing too. We can get into that. But he said, maybe impossible. But as I became a rakugo fan and I played accordion, so you can do something called accordion mandan, which is accordion comedy. And they'll put you in some rakugo shows because you usually have like rakugo, and then something to break up the rakugo with just a different art form. It's a special kind of Japanese juggling, or there could be a kind of Japanese traditional magic, or you could have different kinds of comedians who are standing up. The 2-person comedy, it's called manzai, which is like Abbott and Costello. You have kind of a clown and a straight man. So that's kind of popular. So in a rakugo show, you always had these other comedians. So I became one of the other comedians for really small local shows. But that allowed me to get into the dressing room and see how the rakugo storytellers interacted in the dressing room, and how what you say in Japanese, joge kanke, which is the kind of hierarchical structure of, it's present in all of Japanese society, but particularly the rakugo world. So if you're the lowest ranked storyteller, you have a specific role in the dressing room, like to help the masters get dressed with their kimonos and to serve tea. And then also if there's instruments, you'll be playing the taiko drums, that kind of thing, perhaps the flute, that kind of thing. And they go on first for the first end of the opening act for the first 10 minutes, that kind of thing. Anyway, seeing this all unfold on the inside, like in the wings, in the dressing room, just made me 100 times more desirous of being part of this incredible world. So it took about 3 years, but I finally found a master that I just fell in love with, and asked him, and he accepted me.
That's awesome.
And the rest is history.
So how long were you in your apprenticeship for?
The apprenticeship lasts 3 years.
Okay, so it wasn't 3 years to
Okay.
finally get in the door. It was 3 years
That's
after
what I
you got
thought
in the
too.
door.
Good question, Doug.
3 years to get in the door, and then 3 years under apprenticeship.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
okay.
3 years I was kind of floating around. I was in my 5th year, I saw rakugo for the first time. And in my 8th year here, I began my rakugo apprenticeship. Now, I didn't start knocking on the door year 5. The yakitori master said it's impossible. And so I took his word for it for a while. So I just had fun as a rakugo fan, and I was watching and participating in some shows and mostly watching shows and making friends with rakugo storytellers. And then I moved to Osaka to try to study the Osaka style of rakugo, because it's different than the Tokyo style and different traditions. So it kind of took me 3 years before I finally found a master. And then he didn't want to take me at first. It was like an 8-month kind of waiting period. Now, that's not just because I was a foreigner, but depending on the master, they may give you this waiting period where you make sure that you and the master get along. Because once you're in apprenticeship, you're with your master from morning to night. It's like every waking hour. So there's a kind of, what do you call it? Like, it's probationary for both.
Gotcha.
You're seeing if you want to be with this master, and they're seeing if they want to be with you. So
Filling each other out.
to a probationary period. For me, it wasn't. For me, I was 100% wanted to join. But for my master, it's like, well, this guy's a foreigner. Does he know what he's getting into, and that kind of thing. So it was out of kindness that he kind of made me wait. But then he accepted me, and then my actual 3-year apprenticeship began. And that was every day, not one day off for 3 years, going to his place and doing the cleaning and the laundry and folding kimonos and carrying his bags. But then also every show, we do the backstage work, right? We arrange the dressing room and arrange his kimonos and arrange tea, whatever. And then we go and do the lights and the sound and make sure that's all going properly. And so there's a lot of the stage work. And by doing all this, you're watching the master and the other performers, the older members of your rakugo family, perform like every day, day in, day out. And so it's not like the master's teaching you very much on an ordinary basis, but they say in Japanese, ge o nusumu, which means steal the art, which means just be around the storytellers and suck in as much information as you can.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would you say that's the hardest part of learning rakugo, is kind of like learning how to develop your own style, what to steal and what to use of your own? Yeah.
I don't know if that's the hardest. The hardest thing for me, number one, was learning Japanese properly, because my Japanese at the time was just not polite enough. I thought I was polite enough to function in normal society, but there's just a different level of politeness when you're dealing with the masters and that kind of thing. And so I think everything that came out of my mouth sounded unintentionally, but sounded extremely rude. So first thing my master said was, "Don't talk."
Oh, God.
I joined him to become a comedian. He said, "Okay, stop talking for the time being."
Oh, no.
He made you hit the books?
Yeah, no, that was challenging. And yeah, to your point, it's interesting because they talk about ma. Ma is time, basically timing, pauses and comic timing. And that's kind of everything to comedy. But people say, oh, so when you were with your master for 3 years, he taught you about the timing, right? They can't teach that. Because you imitate. Like I imitate my master, who's a genius and a very famous comedian. You're going to imitate everything he does, and you're supposed to imitate. What you do is when you memorize a story, you do it in front of the master, and then they give you pointers. And then you come back, and then they teach you more. And then once the master thinks you're ready to do that story, he says, okay, you can do it. And then that's your story for life. You have kind of permission to do that story. That's your life. But then you can imitate every single nuance of your master's delivery and get not one laugh, like not one reaction out of the audience. It has to be your own. So that's what you were just saying. Like, how do you make it your own? That is like go up in front of the audience and fail miserably, bomb, and slowly fight through the pain and then find how your version of that story works for you. And that's the process there.
Okay.
And what would you say would be like an aspect of rakugo that makes it so unique compared to like other existing comedy styles, or like from techniques to even how it's performed?
Yeah, it is. It's really wonderful. It's really unique. In one major way is that unlike a lot of other forms of comedy, it's really universal. I was kind of shocked about this when I started doing rakugo in English abroad. I did my first shows in Canada, in Ottawa and Toronto, and I thought I might be going abroad and doing the stories once in a while as a kind of a cultural presentation. I never thought it would lead me to Broadway. I'm right now in my 6th year performing once a month in New York. For example, as a Canadian, when I go to London and go to see stand-up comedy, 1/3 of what the comedian's saying, I don't know what's funny. And it's not because I don't understand English. It's because a lot of the comedy is based on having been brought up in the UK or by being brought up in London, whatever, that kind of thing. There's just background information. There's different styles of delivery and that kind of thing that just harken back to things that people have to know. And those comedians, to be fair, when they leave their home ground, they'll cut out the stuff that people aren't going to understand outside of London. But when you're there, it's not universal at all. But with rakugo, I think because it has been passed down through the centuries, and like the Edo period in Japan is very different to present day Japan. And yet these stories are very simple and very basic stories of the people in the neighborhood that hundreds of years later, Japanese people are still laughing at them. It just makes sense that when you translate them into English or are performed in French, they still work and any culture can kind of understand them. A lot of people in Japan are very surprised about that. They say, well, how do they understand this or how do they understand that? And it's like, okay, well, yeah, those are specific parts of Japanese culture, but that actually the humor is not based in that. Like husbands and wives argue no matter which culture you're in, right? Or everybody has had the experience of living in a domicile with very thin walls so you can hear the husband and wife arguing next door, right? Or every culture has a thief. And so if you have a bumbling thief that doesn't manage to steal anything by the time he's gone through the entire place, and then the owners come home and they end up becoming friends and drinking together, and then they invite the thief to stay over, and the thief says, all right, but make sure you lock the doors. You never know who's lurking outside, that kind of thing. Like this kind of stuff is very much, you don't have to understand Japan necessarily to understand the humor of these stories. And so that's something that I think is really unique to rakugo. Like if you have something like nonverbal, like Mr. Bean is popular, I think, no matter where you go, but that's a very specific thing that doesn't even need language to understand it. But to have like a verbal kind of storytelling comic art form to be this universal, I think is kind of a miracle.
And were you always planning to take rakugo into English, or were you actually trying your hardest to like keep it Japanese?
Well, no, I wasn't specifically trying to keep it Japanese, but I envisioned myself being much more Japan-based. And like with comedy shows, you have like 3 or 4 performers in one particular rakugo concert or rakugo show. So I just thought, I learn it as well as I can in Japanese and be here in Japan performing with the rest. And once in a while, taking it abroad as a kind of cultural demonstration. That's the way I envisioned it. So obviously I did want to take it abroad. I mean, I loved it so much as I got to translate this and share it with my friends and family in Canada and bring this to different countries. This will be fun. But I didn't think it would be on the level of like a long running Broadway show, right? Like playing like legitimate theaters with, people actually paying for tickets and that kind of thing. Like for it to be an actual appreciated art form in itself in that way, other than like a taste of Japan. But I think when people come to the show, I mean, I think they're laughing their heads off. And by the way, it's Japanese. And I think that's the way it's coming off. Like the more and more I did it, I thought, everybody finds this funny. Okay. Not everybody.
So shows in general, you mentioned that they have like 3 to 4 different acts for rakugo and then maybe an intermission in between. But what is the setting, like the atmosphere of a rakugo show? Not only just the performers, but also the audience. Like how interactive is it? You mentioned you kind of get a feel for the audience and everything, but do you actually interact with the audience as well?
Yeah, it is a conversation with the audience without a conversation happening, kind of. You're sensing them out. I think probably any comedian. So I think stand-up comedy is very similar in that way. You're really sensing out your audience. We don't have crowd work. We don't have that. We generally don't have that at all. So we're see, even if someone heckles, I might not react. I could just ignore them. I sometimes, if there's someone that says something in the audience, I might react to it and use it. But I definitely want to put a stop to that. You don't want the audience getting out of control and that kind of thing. People thinking that it's part of the thing to shout things out. But other than that, I mean, it's a cross between going to see like a stand-up comedy show and a piece of theater, which is a one-man or a one-woman show. So it's in between stand-up comedy and in theater. So the atmosphere it does feel very much like you're going to see a piece of theater, which happens to be comic.
Okay.
Or a stand-up comedy show, which happens to be very theatrical, one or the other.
The audience level, like you're on an elevated platform or an elevated stage from the audience.
Yes.
You know, how important is that to the atmosphere of a rakugo setting?
That's just very practical because you're kneeling. If you're not elevated on the stage and then the platform, perhaps risers or whatever they are, then people like in the second or third row back, because of the people sitting in front of them, they won't be able to see. So you want to be seen as much as possible. Rather than being part of the atmosphere, it's kind of an essential part of the.
Okay,
that's a practical concern more than anything.
Okay, I didn't know if there was some like other embedded meaning into that, as opposed like elevate the storyteller. Yeah,
I am the god, and you will submit to my humor. No, nothing like that.
Well, I'm interested if you are willing to share what your first performance was like.
Yeah, my first ever performance as a professional storyteller. So, okay, well, this is also really, you get to another part of the uniqueness of rakugo is that you're in your apprenticeship, but the master puts you on stage almost immediately. As soon as you learn one story, you will do the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes of the shows.
He just pushes you out.
Yeah, you're out there. Like throws you to the dogs. This part of rakugo is really fascinating because okay, you have a famous violinist performing at Carnegie Hall. Like, they're not going to put their 5-year-old student for the first 5 minutes playing Mary Had a Little Lamb out of tune as like the warm-up act to their, virtuoso performance. But that's essentially what happens in rakugo. Like, you just learn one story and you go up there and you talk. You're not good. You're not funny by any stretch of the imagination. And the audience knows that they know the game, right? The audience is directly and viscerally involved in the raising and nurturing of the young storytellers. So you'll go up and they'll, so-and-so has a new apprentice and look forward to their development. Look forward to seeing them in the future. Look forward to the audience becomes part of the family in that way. It's a really beautiful thing. And it's incredible because your training is like in front of an audience. And like I said about like comic timing and that kind of thing, you cannot learn that until you go up and you just fail miserably and then go up again and then fail a little bit less and then start to develop that. So my first performance was really early on. And I actually recently took apprentices myself. I have 2 apprentices in New York. And one is named Katsura Sunny, and the second apprentice is Katsura Moonlight. And they're actually performing about 10 minutes each in my Broadway show now. So the cycle continues. But my first ever show, back to your point, was in Singapore. My artistic father, my master, often got invited abroad. And so I went with him and performed in Singapore. It was, at that point, I was in my master's bad books, like from morning to night for the last 4 months. So it was terrifying. He was in the wings watching to see what would happen. That kind of thing. It was terrifying. And he asked me to do it in English, even though the show was in Japanese for Japanese people who live in Singapore. He said, if everyone who's living in Singapore, they'll understand English. So why don't you do it in English? And I did one of his original stories in English too. And people seemed to laugh. So yeah, it went fine. It was terrifying, but it went fine. Now, my second performance is a little bit more interesting because it just so happened that my master had a little 3-city tour in North America, Chicago, Detroit, and Toronto, which is my hometown. And so, Toronto, so you got to come. And usually, like, the master will meet the new apprentice's parents and just talk about, like, what the apprenticeship is like. It's just part of a ritual in Japan. But my parents were in Toronto, so obviously I couldn't introduce my master to my parents when I started. But my master said, I'll be able to meet your family. And so we were performing in Toronto, 700 people in this hall. And my master is kind of a comic. He is literally a comic genius. He's always looking for like the angle. And he said, Sunshine, go ask if they can play Canadian national anthem, Oh Canada. And I said, okay, sure. He said, okay, so instead of shamisen and taiko, Oh Canada will be your entrance music. And I said, that's pretty funny. But the thing is, like, it wasn't completely thought out because my entrance music starts dun, 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 right? And then my master is like, what are you waiting for? Go out. Because if you wait for the music to start to play, that's being very like conceited. Yeah. Okay. It's like, yeah, I'm the star of the show. Like when you're first, your music starts to get out there, do your story, come back. It's like, it's just make it like, so he's like, get out there. What the hell are you waiting for? So I said, I'm sorry. The second I got on stage was also the exact second that everybody in the audience realized that the national anthem was playing and rose to their feet. So my master's looking in the wings. He's like, Sunshine's getting a standing ovation. This is ridiculous. I didn't know he was that famous here. It's like, and then it's like the worst thing that can happen to you in here. But that was just, you just want to get on and get off with basically nobody noticing that you even exist. Is the best. That's the best situation for you as an apprentice.
And that definitely didn't happen.
Not happening. So then when I got on and knelt down and bowed, people realized that it was a joke. And they realized they knew my master, and they're all fans of my master. So they realized he set that up. And so then they started applauding like crazy. So I literally got a standing ovation on my second before saying a word. And look, my master created a great memory, and it's a story he tells on stage, and it's a story I tell on stage. And that's one of the whole points of the apprenticeship. It's like, yeah, you're there. And like, even when I'm constantly in the doghouse, but when it comes to the show, like there's always something happening that one can use in the future. And so it's why it was a wild ride in that way.
You could say you had home field advantage, huh?
Yeah, 100%. Not that I wanted it. home field disadvantage.
So you talked about performing in New York, Tokyo, Singapore, Toronto, other cities in the US, but the audiences, you perform here only in English, correct? Or do you do a show in Japanese and a show in English?
When I'm in the States?
Yeah.
My regular show in New York is in English.
Okay.
But I might get invited to do shows in Japanese for like a Japanese company or a Japanese gathering or that kind of thing. So I do perform in Japanese sometimes even in the States, but mostly it's in English.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So how do you feel like the reaction is from some of those, obviously, standing ovation aside? And was that the only time you ever got a standing ovation on entrance, or?
On entrance, yes. Sometimes when I'm finished, people appreciate it and stand up, but
the audiences, like you said earlier, are pretty quick to catch on because the stories are kind of universal, right? They kind of like transcend culture.
100%, yeah.
Do you find sometimes there are some audiences, maybe it takes them a little while to like kind of like, what's going on here? Like, are most of them, if they're coming to a rakugo show, do they already kind of have an expectation of what things are going to be like?
Yeah, now with social media, I'd say like the majority of the audience has seen some of my Instagram reels or some YouTube and that kind of thing, and they know a little bit of what it's going to look like, and they know some of the episodes already. So I don't find that audiences are clueless or anything like that, or like they need coddling or anything like that for the most part. And then when you're in, if you're in New York, you're talking about very sophisticated audiences, right? Like, I mean, they're used to all kinds of different entertainment and that kind of thing. So, and a lot of them will have also some connection to Japan, I think, before they just go to a random Japanese show. I think they'll probably have some kind of, they love Japan, or they love Japanese culture, or they've been to Japan before, or they worked in Japan before, or maybe their family member is married to a Japanese person, so they know the culture a little bit. All kinds of things that everybody is pretty prepared to see the show, I think. And it's not a hard art form to like comprehend. It's very, very simple.
Have you ever made like a on stage like pivot to adapt something from like the local scene to your story? Or is it always kind of like a set story that you're working off of?
Well, with the stories proper, which are conversations between characters, I would not generally put in local humor into those, because you're basically creating a canvas in which like 200-300 years ago, Japan, local characters, that kind of thing. So you don't really want to interrupt that image in people's imaginations. It's hard enough for me to make people imagine Japan with my Canadian blonde hair and white face. So that part of it, I certainly don't change the stories depending on the audience. But that being said, the makura, the introduction part, which is the kind of more like stand-up comedy part, if there's stuff happening locally, I might throw that in there. All the storytellers will throw something local in when they're performing in different cities in Japan too. So that's pretty typical. Now, we avoid politics. This is by instructions from the masters. Avoid politics. We avoid religion. We avoid like scurrilous humor, sexual humor, unless you're doing like the Shimo Neta no Kai, which is like the low humor show, where if it's like purposely about scandalous topics, like sex topics and that kind of thing, so that people know not to bring their children. Because another thing about rakugo is like people bring their kids. It's family entertainment, and like kids love rakugo. It's really fascinating because like kids are laughing at the same jokes as like mom and dad and grandma and grandpa. It's really universal in terms of age too. Yeah, it's beautiful. You 3 generations of the same family regularly coming to shows in that way. But basically we are told, and this is where it kind of differs from stand-up comedy, depending on the comedian's style, but for the most part, you don't want to divide your audience. The whole point of your introduction is to bring the audience together, to make the audience like you and want to hear your story. And I think that's a bit different. But stand-up comedy philosophy is like, oh, if I'm pissing off 10% of the audience, just perfect, right? That's exactly the line I want to be walking is what a lot of comedians do, which I love. I love stand-up comedy, but it's different in that way. You don't want to touch any kind of controversial topics.
Yeah.
Okay. In the world of rakugo, you mentioned that you have apprentices that you take under your wing. They are based in New York?
Yeah, my 2 apprentices happen to be based in New York. Yep.
Okay, great.
One is American. He's American of Taiwanese descent. Sonny is. That would make him the first ever American rakugo storyteller in history.
Wow.
The one 100 years ago, Kairakute Braku. He was originally Australian.
Oh.
That was 100 years ago. I was the second in history. And then there's another Canadian that started more recently. And there's a Swedish guy. So there's a couple more that started after me. And then now my apprentices, first one is American. And my second apprentice is a Japanese young lady who has lived in New York for the last few years. So she's based in New York. Yeah.
So the primary demographic of a rakugo comedian is Japanese male. But what is the importance now that you've seen more and more non-Japanese male rakugo performers on stage? Is that the representation is growing gradually? It seems with your help, it's moving forward towards opening the door to other performers.
Yeah. I mean, the door was never closed, but you have to do a 3-year apprenticeship. And I don't think even foreigners in Japan who came before me, a lot did it as a hobby or did it, semi-professionally because it's really fun. If you go to see a rakugo show, if you have any desire to be in front of people, like it's a fun art form to try out. And there's a huge, really popular thing for people to do is amateur groups. There's tons of amateur rakugo groups in Japan. I'm not talking about foreigners or anybody else right now. Just like universities will have like the rakugo club and students will get together and do rakugo shows. And like sometimes companies will have like a rakugo association in their company to get them to learn rakugo. Just local community centers will have like professional rakugo storyteller come in and give people pointers, and then they have their shows. So and I mean, this is great. Like the professionals among us love that because these are the best fans as well. So that was a level which a lot of foreigners had done rakugo. As I was in show business all my life, like I wanted to do it like quote unquote properly. I wanted this to be my life. So I did the apprenticeship. Now, that being said, like if you wanted to go undergo indentured servitude and have a master get mad at you every day for 3 years, it was open. It was never closed. It was open to people. Women too, like it was traditionally a very, very much a men's world. Like the first female master in the Osaka tradition is only like, I think she's still in her 60s. She's still very much like performing. That's how recent it is. I have an older sister storyteller, Katsura Sunshine. I don't know. I'm 15th. She would be maybe the 8th apprentice to my master, or the 9th apprentice to my master. She was only the 3rd woman in all of the Osaka tradition to become a professional. And she's my age. We are the exact same age.
Wow.
I started much later, so she's very much senior to me. I started when I was 38 years old. People usually start in their early 20s. So there's a distance in seniority, but in age, like the 3rd ever Osaka female rakugo storyteller is my age, which is a crazy thing to think about. That being said, there was an NHK show called Chiri to Techin about a girl coming into this man's world and going through the apprenticeship and all her trials and tribulations. Massively popular. It was an asadora, which is a morning serial show. I think it's like 15 minutes a day every morning for like months and months. And people love this. And so for the 1 year, it was a rakugo theme, and it was about a woman joining. And so a lot of women became interested because of that. Like anytime rakugo gets on TV, we get a lot of benefit from that because there's renewed interest. Audience increases, and then people that decide, oh yeah, maybe I want to be a professional storyteller, that even increases. So that part of it has been expanding. I think like 1/10 of the storytellers now are women, which is incredible. If you think about like that's only a generation ago, there were no women.
Right.
As for people who are not Japanese, I don't know. I don't know if it's expanding. I mean, we've got 1,000 storytellers in right now. 6 are not Japanese. 4, maybe 4 are not Japanese. Sunny would be the 4th.
A little crack in the door.
Yeah, it's a little crack in the door. But it's just taking on a tradition, and if you love the tradition and respect the tradition and you want to take it on, I just think it can be done. And I know, I mean, there are masters alive today who just think rakugo cannot be done by women or cannot be done by foreigners. That makes it not rakugo. In their heads, they kind of think that, but at the same time, they perform regularly with women, and they'll look at them and they're like, "Oh, pretty good," right? And then, so they may give this opinion on Tuesday and then perform with women on the Wednesday and be like, "Oh yeah, you're good. I thought you said women can't be rakugo storytellers." No, they can't, but she's good, right? Like, just they're comedians. They just talk shit.
Yeah. So do you have any kind of like game day ritual when you're about to go up on stage to perform? What is your mental preparation that goes into a show?
The thing about rakugo is you never want to be seen to be doing any kind of mental preparation. In Japanese, it's called like dasai, or like just what's your problem? Like you should know your story. Western theater, it's like I need half an hour to get into character before my show or that kind of thing. If you show any evidence of that at the rakugo theater, they'll be, what the hell's that guy's problem?
Oh, really?
It's really, until I got apprentices, I tend to be performing alone. I'd be the lone performer, but I mean, there's so many people around the theater, from producers to everybody that's helping with the show. But basically, with rakugo, you want to be joking around with people in the wings of the theater, even while your entrance music is playing and you're about to go on. And you're joking around, make them laugh a little bit, and then like, okay, here we go, and boom, go on, and you're in the zone. That's the style. And to be honest, the preparation should have happened a long time ago, right? So
that was what those 3 years is for, right?
If I'm doing a new story, I might be going over a couple of the important lines that are a little bit harder to remember. Like half an hour before, I might take a look at the script again or something like that. But as far as a ritual goes, having a drink with the other producers in the dressing room before we go on.
A little bit of liquid courage before going out on stage. Not really courage, but you know.
Yeah, certainly not courage. Like people ask me, do you ever get nervous? But it's funny. Like after 17 years of doing this, and like I would never get nervous before a rakugo performance. If I was doing something else that I'm not used to, like now if you put me back in a classroom and ask me to teach an English grammar class, I think I get a bit nervous because I don't do that every day. But with rakugo, it's just like, okay, yeah, that's fine.
It's an extension of you.
I actually completely went dry 3 months ago. I quit alcohol, but before I did, I enjoyed having. Do you know highball? The highball,
oh
yes,
whiskey and soda with Japanese whiskey with the other producers before the show to have a glass of that. I mean, you don't want to get drunk because then you don't talk properly. But
of course,
yeah, a glass was always fun before the show.
Nice.
I guess that could have been the ritual, and now my whiskey and soda is just soda.
There you go.
Now, we did talk about your first show and your second performance,
Yeah.
but is there a show or performance that is maybe like your favorite or like most memorable that you have?
Yeah, the last one in New York is like every time. I don't know. Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know. Opening night in New York was a lot of fun, but
I mean, do they all start to bleed together at that point?
yeah,
Because you're like doing the same kind of stories and
100%. I mean, there are different milestones, but to your point, it's just all blends together. One of my aims this year is to do what's called o neta, which are the kind of the big, very, very involved stories that people do only when they're well into their careers. And these kinds of stories have never, to my knowledge, been translated in English and attempted to be performed abroad. They could be like 30, 35 minutes long, the story itself, which is long. Usually the lighter stories you're doing are between 10 and 15 minutes. And then that coupled with the introduction gives you your hour and 10 minute show. You do a couple of the stories as well. But for an actual story to be like 30, 35 minutes, that is taking your audience through a journey.
That is.
Yeah, but I really want to, every month I've been including one of those. And it's also like, it's not a laugh a minute. Those stories are very much like a slice of life of Japan to come into this world. And there's funny parts, obviously, but it's not like the lighter stories, which are really quite funny throughout.
Yeah.
And I had a feeling that people were going to love them, but I didn't know. I mean, I love them. So I had a feeling people were going to love them, but I wasn't sure. Like you go to New York and say, yeah, here, listen to my 35-minute story. But if in minute 3, you think, oh, people aren't going to like this, it's going to be a long 32 minutes after that, right? So it's taking a bit of a chance, and I've shied away from it for that reason. But I wanted to see. And so far, like January, February, March, I've done a new one each. And they've gone great. I love
good.
this.
That's great.
Yeah. And the great thing about having apprentices is that because in Osaka Rakugo, this is separate from Tokyo, but in Osaka Rakugo, the music of the shamisen and the taiko drums, it comes in during the story to accent certain scenes in a lot of the stories. And so to have my apprentices learn the instruments and actually do that, I actually went to my master just a few days ago to tell him about my apprentice's first performance, but also to let him know that they're actually training in the instruments as well and bringing so we're doing like way more authentic Osaka Rakugo than he would ever have imagined that we could pull off in New York. And he was really, really impressed. When I played the music that my apprentices were doing, he was like, "Who taught her taiko? You don't play taiko." He pointed his finger at me. "You can't play taiko. How did she learn?" I was like, "Well, I do play a bit," but he was laughing at me because he didn't think I could play, which I can't really. I know the technique, but I don't know. I don't have a vocabulary of songs or anything like that to be able to do. But by luck, my first apprentice, Sonny, is a musician by background. He was a violinist since he was 4, and basically professional, very, very accomplished violinist. And so he took on the shamisen of his own volition when he joined me. So it's very rare for a rakugo storyteller to play shamisen. The shamisen is usually a professional shamisen master that you hire for the part of the rakugo show. The taiko and the flute are played by rakugo storytellers. Most rakugo storytellers learn basic taiko drums. And then some, if they want to be really, really useful in the backstage, they learn the flute. It's pretty hard. But very few play the shamisen, except for like one specific rakugo family in Osaka, the Hayashiya Somemaru Ichimon. Their family, the master was also a professional shamisen player. So I think those guys all learn shamisen. But other than that, most rakugo storytellers do not learn shamisen. So when Sonny took that on, I was like, oh my God, we got it now. We're going to do like a real show here. It's just such a bonus to have like a shamisen player among my apprentices. And my master,
That's awesome.
My master,
It sounds like it's getting fun for you.
Oh, off the charts. Having apprentices is incredible. Even just teaching them rakugo makes me remember things about rakugo that I hadn't thought about for 16 years or 15 years and that kind of thing. So it's fascinating seeing their journey to learning rakugo, but also the amount of help they are in the actual physical show, and also the way the audience. So in Japan, the apprentices just go on. Okay, I'll tell you the actual ethos under apprenticeship during shugyo, which is the apprenticeship. If the show starts, this is Tokyo. We don't do this in Osaka, but in the traditional rakugo theater, if the show starts at 12 noon, the first apprentice goes on at 10 to 12. There might not be anybody in the theater yet. And they shut the mics off. And your job is to perform your story while people are not there or ignoring you with no mics, so that you have to practice like projecting your voice. And you may barely get a smattering of applause. That's the ethos of the apprentice in the traditional rakugo theater.
Whoa.
Now, I can't do that to them in New York on Broadway for crying out loud, right? People who bought a ticket to see Katsura Sunshine, they don't know that tradition. People in Japan know the tradition. So they're kind, they'll clap, they'll applaud, some pretend to listen, that kind of thing. I didn't do that. So I go out first for a very short set and say, hey, ladies and gentlemen, part of the rakugo tradition is that the apprentices, just when they're really starting, it's like a 5-year-old playing Mary Had a Little Lamb in Carnegie Hall. It's that kind of feeling. But you are actually involved in the nurturing of the apprentices. So I have 2 apprentices that are going to do a short story each. Hope you enjoy them. Please be kind. So then I finish my first little story, go off, ladies and gentlemen, my second apprentice, Katsura Moonlight, hope you enjoy your show. And then when she walks on, it's practically standing ovation, which is just like, okay, don't let this get to your head, okay? Because New York audiences, reputationally, they could be tough on comedians, perhaps. But when it's like, we need to get behind this person's fighting right now. They're early. They're like, when there's just a hint of like, no, we need to support this person. They are off the charts, right? Like, I wanted to show like the entire story to my master. I can't show that part to my master. I mean, like, that's ridiculous. Like, you can't, that's not apprenticeship. She's not suffering. Right? So the funny thing was, for Moonlight, my second apprentice, Moonlight, for a long time was on stage in small theaters, both in Japan, and then she came to New York to go to theater school and graduate from theater school and has been on stage in New York as well. So she's very experienced on stage, but she's just starting her rakugo career now. But she got on and was like bowing, and then she got onto the stage and kneel down and bowed again, and people kept clapping, so she bowed again. And then after the story finished, she was like bowing 3 or 4 times, and she got up again and like curtsy, whatever. And I didn't actually see this in the wings because I'm changing, I'm doing other stuff. I have an ear on her show. It's like, oh, it seems to be going well, but I wasn't watching very carefully. I watched the videotapes like weeks later because I was putting together something. And I was like, what the hell? She's like killing some prima donna. I was like, what the hell? So the next time I got to New York, I was like, Moonlight, you're not the star of the show. Okay, what is this prima donna stuff? And she said, oh, Master Sunshine, I'm so sorry. You instructed us to imitate everything you do. I was like, okay, I can't argue with that. She's right. I did say that. So I was like, no, in apprenticeship, just bow once, get on with your story, then get off the stage.
I feel like this is a good way to segue into our last question before we wrap up. But with bringing up apprentices and kind of preparing them for rakugo, not just in Japan, but on the stage internationally, what do you foresee the future of rakugo, both in Japan as well as on an international stage?
Yeah, well, the future, The future of Rakugo in Japan is not affected in any way whatsoever by me. I'm not setting out to change Rakugo in any way. The Rakugo is doing fine as it is. As I said, there's 1,000 professional storytellers now. I mean, Rakugo is alive and well, and I just think it'll continue to flourish and continue to be a popular traditional art form as it is now. Internationally, we're really lucky because there have been a few animes that have centered on Rakugo, and those have become quite popular in the West as well.
Yep. One series has like 3 seasons. It's amazing. It's crazy.
Yeah, and so people's knowledge of Rakugo is really expanding through that too. That's a lot of fun. I mean, then they look up Rakugo, and if they use Roman letters as opposed to looking it up in Japanese, if they put in Rakugo, Rakugo, I tend to come up in the Google search, and they're like, oh, someone's doing it in English. And then, so the audience, I think, is there. So I hope it just expands. Like, I'd love to keep going in New York so that, and then maybe if my apprentices continue, if it becomes like just an option for entertainment tonight, should we go to stand-up comedy? Should we go to a jazz club? Oh, let's go see Rakugo. I mean, if it could become part of the conversation like that, like a lot of Japanese things have, like Japanese, like sushi and yakitori and Japanese cuisine, and like karaoke is a kind of like fun thing to go, let's just go and sing. If it could be part of people's entertainment menu in the future and everybody knows what the Rakugo becomes part of the English vernacular, I mean, that would be amazing.
That's
That would
awesome.
be.
Yeah. You're doing a great part in terms of sharing it, and hopefully you get to share it a little bit more in in New Orleans a little bit, in the future. Whenever that may be. September. Maybe September. Sorry, I was coughing on some coffee.
Did my show in September just get canceled behind the scenes? You guys are like,
No.
You guys are coughing as you say that.
Well, nothing's in stone yet, so we're like,
No, of course not. I'm kidding. Oh, are we not allowed to say that? That we were hoping that.
Oh, we can. I was just
We're
I'm allowed to say it. I really want to go to New Orleans and perform in
We really
September.
want you to
guys
come
make
to
it happen.
Yeah. Seriously.
For sure, someday. If that particular date that we were talking about doesn't work out, yeah, I'd love to go to New Orleans and do a show. And I will bring Sunny and Moonlight, and perhaps there will be even more apprentices at the time.
Oh, all right.
fun.
We would love to have you guys. We would love to have you guys.
Fantastic.
Of course.
Thank you so much.
Before we wrap up, you mentioned your
Sure.
Instagram, you mentioned YouTube. Where can people find out more about you and your performances, and where, online, like I know you have a website as well. Would you like to share some of those options for folks to follow you?
For my shows, the best place to go is rakugo.lol. I was shocked when that was actually a domain, so I jumped right on it. But rakugo.lol, that lists my New York performance schedule and my Tokyo performance schedule. I'm performing 1 week every month in a small theater in Tokyo, Asakusa in Tokyo. And that's in English as well, aimed at people coming from abroad. There's 3 to 4 million people coming from around the world to Japan every single month. It is just nuts. It's incredible. So Japan is just so popular. I heard a worldwide survey that was done towards the end of the COVID lockdown saying, once we can travel again, where do you want to go? And no matter what country, apparently Japan was at the top of every list. It's and I think for good reason, obviously. Yeah, I believe it. It's totally believable. It's not surprising, but yeah, you see it here. It's like, holy smokes, there's a lot of people coming into Japan, which is great. I'm so happy that there's an appreciation for Japan like that. So yeah, if as far as the performance schedule goes, rakugo.lol. If you want to see Rakugo clips, reels, Instagram reels, Katsura Sunshine, spelled the way it sounds. Does it sound like anything? Katsura, Katsura, Sunshine, and I'll have a little bit longer form, a couple of longer form videos on YouTube.
Okay,
nice.
That's awesome, and we are so happy to have you on. And as Jen mentioned earlier, she was super excited.
Yeah.
Why am I talking for you, Jen? You can talk for yourself.
No, because I get nervous. Yeah, no, I've actually, seriously, like Doug and I, when we're going through the seasons and like what episodes we're going to cover and what topics, I'm always like pushing those kind of topics like into our season. And I probably found you online maybe like a year or two ago.
Right.
And I was like, eventually I'm going to get this guy on. I want to get Sunshine on. And I'm so happy to get you on. And I really appreciate you. I really appreciate you coming on. It really means a lot to me.
Thank you very much. Oh, I appreciate the invitation. I gotta do something about my image if I'm that intimidating.
No.
Atmosphere.
Trust me, it's not you. It just happens.
Right. Well, thank you so much for the invitation and for taking time out of your busy schedule to interview little old me.
Kochira koso. You are taking time out of your busy schedule to work with us. So we appreciate that a lot.
As I said before the show, it's 8 a.m. here in Tokyo. I'm not busy. Not busy at all. We can get together tomorrow, same time. I'll still be free.
All right. Well, I will absolutely. I'm going to be in Japan later on this year, so I'm going to look and see if I could find out when your shows are on. If I'm there, and when they're on, then maybe I'll check one out.
Yeah, please get in touch when you do come. That'd be great.
We'll do. Thank you again, and
thank you.
We keep saying thank you a million times because we don't know how to close it out. But no, really, we do appreciate it, and look forward to hopefully seeing you in New Orleans come September.
That would be amazing. Hopefully by then it will be without the cough.
Yes.
Exactly. Hopefully in the next month or so, no more coughs.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you so much, guys. This is awesome. Time went by like really fast.
And that's a wrap on our Season 6 premiere of Krewe of Japan. A huge thank you to Katsura Sunshine for joining us and sharing his incredible journey into the world of rakugo. Where would the international awareness and appreciation of rakugo be if it weren't for Sunshine? And of course, yakitori. What a ride. All of his social media and other links will be in the show notes. We hope you enjoyed hearing about what makes rakugo so unique, all of Sunshine's personal stories of how he got to where he is today, and how this centuries-old form of storytelling continues to find fresh life through the talented artists of rakugo in Japan and now around the world. Speaking of rakugo around the world, New Orleans fans, listen up. There's a chance Japan Society of New Orleans might be bringing rakugo to the Crescent City this fall. So keep your eyes and ears peeled on more details in the coming months. You won't want to miss it. And of course, thank you, our amazing listeners, for kicking off yet another season with us. Whether you are new to the crew or you've been with us since the beginning, we're very excited to have you along for the ride. If you enjoyed this episode, do us a favor, subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and drop a review on your favorite podcast platform. Every single one of those 5-star ratings and reviews helps others interested in Japan and this kind of content find the podcast. Or hey, maybe just let a friend know about us. Any and all support is incredibly appreciated. You can also share your experiences and stories with rakugo with us on social media. Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, X, whichever you want to call it. Just search for Krewe of Japan Podcast to stay in the loop for future episodes, upcoming events Japan Society has, and Japan-related content. That's KREWEOFJAPAN. Or maybe you want to reach out to us directly. Send us an email at kreweofjapanpodcast@gmail.com. We love to hear from you. We've got a whole lot more to come in this exciting season ahead, but that's it for today. Until next time.
Looking to start your own podcast and don't know what platform to use? Tell me about it. When we started the Krewe of Japan podcast, we tried a bunch of the big name recording platforms, but always came back to the one we're still currently using to this day, Zencastr. Zencastr is now the all-in-one solution making podcasting easy. In addition to its high audio and video quality for podcast production, Zencastr provides a full suite of production tools to record, produce, and publish studio quality content from the comfort of your home. Just log in through your browser and start recording. It's that simple. For us, we simply send out links to our guests and they join the lobby. But before you know it, it's all done and you have your studio quality audio and up to 4K video right there ready for you, right when you finish. The best part is having their multi-layered backups to ensure that your recordings are in the highest quality, regardless of anyone's internet connection stability. With Zencastr's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcasts in one place and distribute to all the major destinations. It's really that easy. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code Krewe of Japan, KREWEOFJAPAN, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's your time to share your story.